Justin Herbert fought through injury last night, but he's not out of the woods yet. I'm Joe Dolan, and this is the Fantasy Points Daily Lineup for Friday, September 16th, 2022.
It's time for the FantasyPoints.com Daily Lineup. Staying on top of the latest news and updates around the NFL. Rise and shine, folks. We're taking the field. Here's your host, FantasyPoints.com's Joe Dolan.
Starting at quarterback last night, and hopefully in week 3, is the Chargers' Justin Herbert. Herbert had a heroic performance in a losing effort against the Chiefs in week 2, posting 334 yards passing and 3 touchdowns, despite a pick 6. But the most notable thing about Herbert's game was the massive hit he took in the fourth quarter, injuring his midsection. Coach Brandon Staley said after the game that the injury was, quote, something in his abdomen. Staley also said that Herbert is, quote, okay. Now, here's what our Dr. Edwin Porras had to say. Herbert was getting x-rays on his ribs immediately after the Thursday night game per Carissa Thompson. Herbert was moving very gingerly and running on pure adrenaline. Luckily, he has 10 days to get right, but he's not out of the woods to miss time. If he misses time, 2 to 4 weeks is an average return time with a rib injury, but it can be sooner if Herbert gets a pain injection. I recall a certain Chargers quarterback getting one of those. I would advise against that, Justin. A potential comp per Edwin is 2021 Tua Tagovailoa, who missed 3 weeks. The absolute worst case scenario is 2022 Drew Brees, who missed 4 games because he additionally had a collapsed lung. Given the talk from Staley after the game, I would seriously doubt that Herbert is on the long end of that recovery spectrum. But Herbert is obviously someone we'll have to monitor going forward, at least in the short term. The Chargers' backup quarterback is Chase Daniel. Isn't he everyone's backup quarterback? And they play the Jaguars next week. So if Justin Herbert needs to take some time off, there's a decent opponent to do it against. Now, in our first running back spot, we have an update on DeAndre Swift. Swift didn't practice on Thursday, logging his second straight missed session as he deals with an ankle injury. However, he said he was fine after practice on Wednesday, and indeed, Pro Football Network's Aaron Wilson reported on Thursday that Swift is expected to play in week 2 against the Commanders. Also notable is the fact that both the Lions and Commanders have issues up front. The Lions are down to their third-string right guard, while center Frank Ragnow is clearly hobbled with a groin injury. Ragnow played through the groin injury against Philadelphia and was a key cog in the Lions' excellent run game in that contest, but is clearly still hurting and hasn't practiced this week. Meanwhile, Washington lost rookie defensive tackle Fedarian Mathis to a knee injury in week 1, so their run defense could be less than stellar, as it was against the Jaguars. Now, obviously, today and the final injury report will tell a big story for Swift. I'll take Wilson's report, he's plugged in, that Swift will play to heart, but we still need to have Jamal Williams ready to go in the event of a setback. Our other running back spot goes to Naji Harris. In another injury update, it looks like Naji will be good to go for the Steelers in their week 2 contest against the Patriots. Now, despite a foot injury that had him writhing in pain in week 1 against the Bengals and in a boot after that game, Naji practiced in full on Thursday and may not even carry an injury designation heading into Sunday. Of course, the Steelers' offensive line couldn't open a hole with a jackhammer, and that's a big issue for even a 100% Naji Harris, who gained just 26 yards on 12 touches in week 1, having his day saved by a short receiving touchdown. Now, here's what Dr. Edwin Porras had to say about Naji. Harris was able to practice in full on Thursday and is likely to suit up on Sunday. But zooming out from a 10,000-foot point of view, Naji has been dealing with this for nearly 2 months, and zooming out even further, this is the 3rd foot injury he's had since 2018. He's highly volatile rest of season. I would agree. I'm considering Naji a low-end running back 2 this week, but don't blame you if you want to play him, given Mike Tomlin's love for using bell cow backs. I'm just hoping he makes it through this game unscathed, and I can feel better about him going forward. In our first wide receiver spot, we have updates on the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers' top 3 wide receivers, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Julio Jones, all did not practice on Thursday. Now, Godwin is not expected to play for a number of weeks with a hamstring injury. Julio logged his 2nd straight missed practice with a knee injury, while Evans was downgraded from limited to no practice with a calf injury. Now, as I mentioned on yesterday's program, this could obviously be the Buccaneers' way of keeping their veteran wide receivers in bubble wrap, knowing that Godwin is already going to be unavailable to them. But a midweek downgrade for Evans still gives me the willies. Now, Evans has a history of soft tissue injuries, but mostly hamstring issues. He plays hurt often, and usually he plays pretty well. But from a fantasy perspective, here is what's complicating matters this week. He has historically, this being Mike Evans, struggled against the Saints and Marshawn Lattimore. In 5 games against New Orleans with Tom Brady at quarterback, Evans has just 9 catches on 18 targets in 5 games against Lattimore and the Saints, including playoffs, by the way. Though 3 of those 9 catches have gone for touchdowns, kind of saving his day. Now, in good news for the Buccaneers, Russell Gage practiced in a limited fashion on Thursday through a hamstring injury of his own after not being in practice on Wednesday. Gage could be hugely important if either Julio or Evans can't play. And again, we already know Godwin's almost certainly not going to go. Meanwhile, veteran Brashad Perriman was also limited in practice with a knee injury on Thursday, suggesting he'll be good to go on Sunday. Perriman really isn't on the redraft radar, but he sure as hell could be a 1-week fill-in against the Saints in deeper leagues or for DFS purposes, depending on the status of Evans and Julio here. At our other wide receiver spot, we have another dreaded midweek downgrade. Now, Colts wide receiver Michael Pittman did not practice on Thursday as he deals with a quadriceps injury. Pittman was limited in Wednesday's practice and then was a DNP on Thursday. So this is massive news. A limited practice on Wednesday followed by a DNP on Thursday would suggest Pittman got hurt in Wednesday's practice and couldn't finish the session. Now, we already talked about it with Mike Evans, but we hate midweek downgrades in fantasy football because Pittman is a slam dunk wide receiver 1 whenever he plays, but that seems to be in doubt in week 2 against the Jags. As for the rest of the Colts wide receivers, this was a rotation after Pittman in week 1, with only Paris Campbell playing more than 60% of the offensive snaps among wide receivers against the Texans. Rookie Alec Pierce suffered a concussion on a brutal hit and is in the protocol, but practiced in a limited fashion on Thursday, suggesting he's making progress. If Pittman can't go, Campbell would be the best bet for fantasy production, though Pierce and Ashton Dulin are bigger and therefore better fits in Pittman's role, and they'll have some appeal in DFS against this Jaguar secondary, which, by the way, gave up 4 touchdowns to Commanders wide receivers last week. In our flex spot, let's wrap it up with yet another midweek downgrade. Yikes. Saints running back Alvin Kamara did not participate in practice on Thursday as he deals with a rib injury. He was at practice, but didn't participate in drills per Mike Triplett of NewOrleans.football. Now, we considered Kamara somewhat low usage with a 62% snap share and just 13 opportunities in week 1, just a little blip on the radar in a weird game. But it came out on Monday that he was playing through a rib injury, which is why the usage was down. Now, Coach Dennis Allen said earlier this week that he thinks Kamara is, quote, going to be fine, per ESPN's Catherine Terrell. But Kamara was downgraded to no practice on Thursday after a limited session on Wednesday, so he appears truly questionable at best. Now, Mark Ingram could provide some immediate relief this weekend for those who need a running back fill-in. Ingram, meanwhile, was limited in practice on Thursday with an ankle injury, though it doesn't appear serious. In a tough matchup with the Bucs, Ingram would be a flex option if Kamara can't play. I'm Joe Dolan, and this has been the second regular season week at least, of the Fantasy Points Daily Lineup. It will air every Tuesday through Friday this NFL season. Remember to like this video, just hit that thumbs up, comment on the video, and subscribe to the Fantasy Points channel for the daily lineup and all of our videos. We also have college football and PGA channels, so if you're into that, why don't you subscribe to those as well? And as the injuries from week 1 remind you, and certainly the injuries I talked about in this program, your fantasy roster is never complete. At fantasypoints.com, our mission is to help you score more fantasy points. If you're looking for the best waiver advice, trade advice, start-sit advice, all you need is our standard package. But if you like playing DFS and you like making prop bets against spread bets, you'll want our premium package. Whatever the case, use code LINEUP22 to get 10% off any package. And here's the deal. Both of those packages give you access to our subscriber Discord with a direct line to me and the rest of our staff. Now, go kick some ass in week 2, everybody. and I'll talk to you next Tuesday.